village of Fambara, every first daughter was said to belong to their god, Umaya, the protector of the village. They were never to be married but can go on living their lives without a husband and without children. When a first daughter became of age, the villagers would hold a grand ceremony marrying their first daughters off to the god, Umaya. Any first daughter to disobey this always end up with serious punishment from the god and sometimes even death. Naya grew up in the big city, far from her family's village of Fambara. One day, while studying at the university, she met a young man named Ken. He was funny, caring, and loved Naya with all his heart. It didn't take long before they fell deeply in love. After years of dating, Ken asked Naya to marry him, and she said yes with a happy tear in her eye. They had a beautiful wedding surrounded by friends and family, but Naya had no idea that her marriage broke an old tradition from her village. Back in Fambara, the villagers whispered about Naya. She is a first daughter, they said. Her life belongs to Umaya. This marriage is forbidden. For centuries, first daughters were promised to Umaya, the village's god, as part of a sacred tradition. But Naya didn't know about this. Her parents had left the village when she was little and had never told her about the old ways. Naya and Ken's marriage started out like a beautiful dream. They laughed together, planned their future, and talked about raising a happy family. Not long after the wedding, strange things began to happen. First, it was small. Naya started having terrible nightmares. She would wake up crying, her heart pounding, but she couldn't remember why. Sometimes, she thought she heard whispers in the dark, but when she turned on the light, the room was silent. She went on with her life. Then after a few nights, she also had a dream of a deep forest, a glowing shrine, and a voice calling her name. She thought it was her imagination, but the dreams became more vivid. One night, she woke up gasping, hearing the voice say, "You have forgotten your promise." When Naya and Ken decided to start a family, they were filled with hope. They talked for hours about what their baby would look like and even picked out names. Few months after the wedding, Naya got pregnant. She and Ken were over the moon. They celebrated quietly, keeping it a secret until they were ready to share the news. Naya would sit in bed at night, smiling as she imagined the baby's laugh and the sound of its first steps. But one day, she felt a sharp pain in her stomach. Her heart raced as she told Ken, "Something's wrong." They rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. The baby was gone. Naya cried for days. "Why did this happen to us?" she asked Ken, tears streaming down her face. Ken didn't know what to say. He held her tightly. "We'll try again," he said softly, though he felt sad himself. Months later, Naya got pregnant again. This time, she was more careful. She rested a lot, avoided anything stressful, and prayed silently every night. But at 3 months, it happened again. She woke up one morning to find blood on the sheets. Her cries woke Ken, who looked at her with wide, panicked eyes. "No, not again," he whispered. They rushed to the hospital, hoping for a miracle, but they lost the baby. After the second miscarriage, Naya started to feel hopeless. She avoided her friends who had babies because it hurt too much to see their happy families. Ken tried to stay strong for her, but he was struggling too. One night, he sat on the couch with his head in his hands. "What if we're not meant to have children?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The third pregnancy came as a surprise. Naya wasn't even sure she wanted to try again. But when she found out, she dared to hope. "This time will be different," Ken said, holding her hand. They prepared carefully, doing everything they could to protect the baby. But at 4 months, the nightmares began. Naya started dreaming of a shadowy figure standing by her bed, whispering, "This child is not yours to keep." She woke up screaming every night, her heart pounding. Ken tried to comfort her, but the dreams left her feeling uneasy. A week later, she woke up in pain, clutching her stomach. This time, the loss was so devastating that Naya couldn't even cry. She sat silently on the hospital bed, staring at the wall. Ken felt powerless. He didn't know how to help his wife or himself. Their once happy home was now filled with silence and sadness. Naya began to wonder if there was something wrong with her, something deeper than the doctors could explain. And as the voice from her nightmares grew louder, She couldn't shake the feeling that her struggles were connected to the whispers from her past. As Naya and Ken continued to struggle, their problems grew worse, pulling other people into their troubles. One evening, Naya's neighbor, an old woman named Mama Ife, knocked on their door. "I've heard the whispers at night," she said in a serious voice. "There's something dark in this house. You need help." Ken frowned. "Whispers?" Mama Ife's face grew stern. "The kind that come from the spirits. Something is very angry with you." That night, Naya couldn't sleep. She kept hearing soft cries, like a baby calling out. But when she checked, there was nothing there. The next morning, the couple found claw-like marks on their bedroom door. "This isn't normal," Naya whispered, her hands shaking. The troubles didn't stop there. One day, at the market, Naya was buying fruits when a stranger grabbed her arm. "You don't belong here," the woman hissed, her eyes wild. "You've angered the gods. Fix it before they take everything." Terrified, Naya pulled away and ran home. She told Ken everything, and they both felt a deep fear. Then, even their closest friends began to avoid them. "Your home feels cursed," one friend said, refusing to visit anymore. Every time Naya saw a baby in a stroller or heard the laughter of children playing, her chest tightened. She wanted to give up, but the longing in her heart wouldn't go away. "Why does this keep happening to us?" she asked Ken one night, her voice trembling. Ken pulled her close and whispered, "We'll keep trying. No matter what it takes, we'll find a way." But deep down, Naya felt something she couldn't explain. The miscarriages weren't the only problem. Naya and Ken began to argue about little things, big things, anything. One night, they had their worst fight yet. Naya felt so angry she didn't even recognize herself. "Why are we always fighting?" she cried. Ken stared at her with tired eyes and said, "I don't know who we are anymore." Naya felt like her heart was breaking into pieces. One evening, while Naya was alone in their living room, the lights flickered. Suddenly, the room grew cold, and she heard a deep, whispering voice. "You belong to me, Naya," it said. She froze, her body shaking with fear. The voice sounded familiar, like the one in her dreams. It seemed like their lives were falling apart piece by piece. Ken lost his job without warning after an important deal fell through. "It doesn't make sense," he told Naya, pacing the living room. Everything was fine, and then suddenly, everything went wrong. The stress began to weigh on him, and he started spending more time away from home, leaving Naya to deal with her own growing fears. Meanwhile, Naya began hearing the voice more often. It followed her everywhere. In the shower, in the kitchen, even in her dreams. The voice was louder now, commanding and cold. "You are mine," Naya said. "You broke the promise. You will pay." One evening, as Naya was cooking dinner, the stove burst into flames without warning. She screamed and stumbled back, but the fire disappeared as quickly as it had come. When Ken rushed in, there was no sign of a fire, but the look on Naya's face scared him. "Something is haunting us," she whispered. "It's not just in my head, Ken. It's real." Ken refused to believe it at first, but then he had his own terrifying experience. One night, while driving home, he saw a shadowy figure standing in the middle of the road. It looked like a man but taller, with glowing eyes. Ken swerved to avoid it and nearly crashed into a tree. When he turned back, the figure was gone. Soon after, strange things started happening in their home. Doors would slam shut on their own. One night, they woke up to find the word "promise" scratched into their bedroom wall, as if by invisible claws. Ken was furious. "This has to stop, Naya. We need to do something." But things only got worse. Naya became sick, so weak she could barely get out of bed. The doctor couldn't find anything wrong with her, but she felt like something was draining the life out of her. After a few weeks in the hospital, she miraculously got better and they went back home, hoping that this was behind them. As the days passed, the weight of their losses made life harder for Naya and Ken. Naya felt empty inside, not just because of the miscarriages, but because the joy she once had seemed so far away. She barely smiled, and Ken didn't know how to bring back the light in her eyes. Ken was at his breaking point. He didn't know what else to do. so he decided to talk to his mother, hoping for guidance. He told her about the miscarriages, the strange events, and the heavy sadness that seemed to hang over their marriage. His mother listened silently, her face growing more serious with every word. When Ken finished, she sighed deeply and shook her head. "Son, we warned you," she said. "This is what happens when you marry outside our village. You should have chosen a girl from here, someone we know and trust." Ken frowned, his chest tightening. "Mom, Naya isn't the problem. She's a good woman and she's hurting too. This isn't her fault." But his mother waved him off. "Open your eyes, Ken. Since you married her, nothing has gone right. She brings bad luck. She can't even give you children. You're young, you can start over. Leave her and find a proper wife from our village. Someone who will bring blessings, not curses." Ken felt a flash of anger. "I can't believe you're saying this, Mom. I love Naya. She's my wife, and I promise to stand by her no matter what. I'm not going to leave her, especially now when she needs me the most." His mother's face hardened. "Love won't fix this, Ken. You'll regret holding on to her." Ken stood up, his jaw set. "I won't regret it. Naya is my family now, and I'll fight for her. I just thought you'd understand." He left the house, his heart heavy but his resolve stronger than ever. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to protect his marriage and find a way to bring peace back into their lives. Together. One night, after another painful argument, Naya sat alone in the dark living room. She stared out of the window, tears streaming down her face. "Why does this keep happening?" she whispered to herself. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the room. Even though the windows were shut, she froze, feeling the tiny hairs on her arms rise. Then, she heard it again, a deep, whispering voice. "This was never meant to be," the voice said. It was the same voice from her dreams. Naya jumped up, her heart pounding. "Who's there?" she shouted, but the room was empty. Ken rushed in from the bedroom, alarmed by her scream. She turned to him, shaking. "Ken, I think something is haunting us. It's real, and it doesn't want us to have a baby." One night, something strange happened. Naya woke up suddenly, gasping for air. The room felt colder than usual, and she thought she heard a whisper, soft but clear. "Why do you fight it?" the voice said. Naya froze. "Ken, did you hear that?" she whispered, shaking him awake. But Ken didn't hear anything. The next day, Naya couldn't shake the strange feeling that someone, or something, was watching her. As she cleaned the kitchen, she saw the word, "Stop," written in the steam on the window. Her breath caught in her throat. She wiped it away quickly, trying to tell herself it was nothing. But deep down, she felt scared. That evening, as they sat on the couch, the lights in the house started to flicker. Then, without warning, the room went completely dark. Naya clutched Ken's arm. "What's going on?" she whispered. "I don't know," Ken said, trying to stay calm. He grabbed a flashlight and walked around the house. Everything seemed fine, but the uneasy feeling didn't go away. Later that night, Naya had another nightmare. She dreamed of standing in a dark forest, surrounded by tall trees. A shadowy figure stepped out from the darkness, pointing at her. "You can't run from this," the figure said. Naya woke up screaming, sweat pouring down her face. Ken held her close as she cried. "Naya, this isn't normal," he said. "Something is happening to us. We need to figure out what it is." Naya nodded, but she had no idea where to start. She couldn't explain the whispers, the dreams, or the strange things happening in their home. All she knew was that it felt like their troubles were coming from something bigger than they could see. As the days went on, the strange events only got worse. Objects in their house moved on their own. Mirrors cracked for no reason. Naya began to feel weak all the time, as if something was draining her energy. "I can't live like this anymore," she told Ken. "We have to do something." Ken agreed. "But how do we fight something we don't understand?" That night, Naya remembered something. Her parents had always avoided talking about their old village. They had told her little about where they came from, but now she wondered if there was a reason for their silence. "Ken," she said slowly, "I think this might have something to do with my family." Ken looked at her, confused. What do you mean? Naya shook her head. I don't know yet, but I think we need to go back. Back to where my family is from. Maybe the answers are there. Ken hesitated but finally nodded. If that's what it takes, we'll go. We'll do it together. And so, with fear and hope mixed in their hearts, Naya and Ken packed their bags. They didn't know what they would find in the village, but they both felt it was the only way to end the nightmare. As they drove into the unknown, the shadow of their troubles seemed to follow them, waiting for the right moment to strike again. When they finally arrived, the village looked old and calm. The houses were small, with straw roofs, and the air smelled of fresh earth and trees. Children played in the dusty streets, and old women sat weaving baskets. But as soon as they stepped out of the car, Naya noticed something strange. The people stared at her, whispering to each other. Some even pointed. Why are they looking at us like that? Ken asked, lowering his voice. Naya shook her head. I don't know, she said, but deep down, she felt a shiver run through her. They walked to the small home of Naya's aunt, the only family she had left in the village. Aunt Efua was an old woman with kind eyes, but when she saw Naya, her smile faded. You've come back, she said, her voice heavy. What do you mean? Naya asked. Aunt Efua sighed and motioned for them to sit. She poured them tea and sat down across from them. Naya, there is something you don't know, she began. Something about our village. Naya leaned forward, her heart pounding. What is it? Efua looked at her with sad eyes. You were born under a promise that was made long ago, but you left before it could be fulfilled. And now, it seems the past has followed you. Naya felt her chest tighten. What promise? What are you talking about? Efua hesitated, then said, the firstborn daughter belonged to the god of this village. It has been this way for many years. You were meant to take part in a ceremony when you came of age, but you never did. By leaving, you broke the bond. Ken frowned, his voice sharp. A god? This doesn't make sense. How can something like this affect us now? Efua's voice grew serious. The god does not forget, and it does not forgive easily. The troubles you've faced, your pain, your loss, they are signs that it is angry. Naya's heart raced. She thought of the miscarriages, the strange whispers, and the nightmares. Could all of this really be because of a promise she didn't even know about? What can we do? She asked, her voice shaking. Efua looked at her sadly. You must go to the shrine and face the god. It is the only way. Ken stood up, anger flashing in his eyes. This is ridiculous. We're not going to bow to some old story. But Naya grabbed his hand. Ken, what if it's true? What if this is the reason everything is falling apart? We have to try. Ken looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. All right, he said quietly, but I'm not leaving your side. The next morning, they prepared to go to the shrine deep in the forest. Naya's heart pounded with every step, and the air seemed to grow colder as they got closer. What would they find? Would the god listen to them? She didn't know, but one thing was certain. This was the only chance they had to save their future. Naya and Ken walked hand in hand through the forest, the path covered in thick leaves. The trees around them were tall and dark, their branches twisting like giant hands. The air felt heavy, and every sound, birds chirping, leaves rustling, made them jump. Finally, they reached the shrine. It was an old, crumbling stone structure covered in moss. At the center stood a large, carved figure of the god. Its eyes seemed to glow faintly, watching them. Naya shivered, feeling like she was being judged. Aunt Efua had told them what to do. Naya stepped forward, her knees shaking, and knelt before the shrine. She closed her eyes and spoke softly. If I have done wrong, I am sorry. I didn't know about the promise. Please forgive me. The air around them grew colder, and suddenly, the wind howled through the trees. Ken held Naya tightly as a deep voice filled the forest. You left your place, first daughter. You turned your back on what was owed. Naya's heart raced. I didn't know. Please, I'm here now. Tell me what to do to make things right. The god's voice boomed. You must offer something in return. Your life or your freedom. Naya gasped. My freedom? "You may stay in this village forever," the god said. "Serve as my guardian, and I will end your suffering. Or leave and face the curse." Ken stepped forward, his voice trembling but firm. "No, this isn't fair. She didn't ask for this." The god's voice rumbled like thunder. "The choice is hers." Tears filled Naya's eyes. She thought of her life with Ken, their dreams of a family, and everything they had already lost. "I'll stay," she said softly. Ken grabbed her arm. "No, Naya, we'll fight this together. We can find another way." But Naya shook her head. "Ken, we've lost too much. I can't let this curse destroy us anymore." The god's voice softened. "Your choice is made. The curse is lifted." Suddenly, the cold air warmed, and the forest seemed to glow with light. Naya felt a weight lift from her chest, and for the first time in months, she could breathe freely. Ken hugged her tightly, tears streaming down his face. "I won't leave without you," he said. "You have to," Naya said, smiling sadly. "I'll be okay. This is where I belong now." They spent one last night together in the village, sharing stories and memories. The next morning, Ken said goodbye, promising to visit her as often as he could. As he walked away, Naya watched him go, her heart aching but at peace. From that day on, Naya became the guardian of the shrine. She kept the god's peace and protected the village. Though her life was different from what she had imagined, she knew she had saved Ken and herself from more pain. And every so often, when Ken visited, they would sit by the shrine, holding hands, and remember the love that had brought them through it all.